At midnight, God killed all of Egypt's firstborn children, including Pharaoh's son that sat on his throne, and all the firstborn cattle. A great cry was heard as Pharaoh, his servants, and all the Egyptians got up in the night and saw the death. There was at least one person dead in every Egyptian household. Because of this, Pharaoh finally gave up fighting and told Moses and Aaron to leave with the Israelites and their cattle and go and serve their God. The Egyptians told them to leave quickly because they were worried that otherwise God might kill all of them. The Egyptians gave the Israelites jewels and gold, and the Israelites quickly left. God led them in a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire at night, so that they had light all the time. He made sure not to lead the Israelites through Philistia. God knew that the Philistines wouldn't allow them passing through their land. The Philistines would make war with the Israelites, saying that they had run away from their Egyptian masters. Therefore, God, by bringing them the way of the sea, revealed himself to be compassionate, as well as a God of judgment. God informed Moses that Pharaoh would chase them, and he directed Moses just where by the sea he should camp. He told Moses that God would be honored before Pharaoh and all his army. After the Israelites had been gone several days, the Egyptians told Pharaoh that they had fled and they would never return to work for them again. This made the Egyptians regret letting the Israelites leave. Despite all the plagues they had suffered, they were so hardened by their continual rebellion that they decided to chase the Israelites and force them to come back to Egypt. Pharaoh took a large army with 600 chariots and went after them, and he overtook them where they were camped by the sea. When Pharaoh had nearly caught up with them, the Israelites saw the Egyptians camped near them and were terrified. They cried to God and asked Moses why he had brought them to the desert just to die, saying that they had wished they had stayed in Egypt, serving the Egyptians as slaves, rather than dying in the middle of nowhere. Moses told them not to be scared, because God will save all of them. He will fight the Egyptians and make sure that the Israelites never see them again. How quickly the Israelites distrusted God. They had seen the miracle of the 10 plagues God had sent to free them, but when their confidence in God was tested, they complained. Instead of trusting that God would save them, they complained to Moses, accusing him of being the cause of all their likely deaths. Moses encouraged them to trust God and to wait to see what the Lord would do for them. Moses earnestly cried to God to save his people. God asked Moses why he was so worried. He told Moses to lift up the shepherd's rod he was holding and stretch his hand over the sea, and then God will separate the water and create a dry passage in the middle. God told Moses that when the Israelites need something, God will provide it. It was night time, and the angel of God and the pillar of cloud that was leading the Israelites went and stood behind them, so that the angel was in between them and the Egyptians. To the Egyptians it was a cloud of darkness, and to the Israelites it was a cloud of light. Because of this, the Egyptians couldn't see the Israelites and didn't approach them. This was another sign of love for the Israelites to learn to trust God. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and God caused a strong wind to separate the sea and create a dry path in the middle. The Israelites walked along this throughout the night, with the Egyptians unable to see them due to the cloud of darkness. The Egyptian army was celebrating throughout that night that the Israelites had no way to escape because of the Red Sea. In the morning, as they came up to the sea, they found the dry path with walls of water on each side, and the Israelites were halfway through. The Egyptians waited a while to decide what they should do. They were disappointed and angry that they thought they had caught the Israelites, but they had used this unexpected path. They decided to follow them. The whole army followed them and was in the middle of the sea. God looked at the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and the cloud, and God's angels removed their chariot wheels, so that they progressed very slowly along the path. The army remembered the plagues that God had sent, and they decided that God was fighting for the Israelites, and that unless they went back to Egypt, God would kill them all. The army was terrified, and were turning round when God told Moses to stretch out his hand over the sea, so that the waters would crash down on the Egyptians. Moses did this, and the whole Egyptian army was killed. The Israelites were protected, and made it to the other side. The Israelites saw the Egyptians' dead bodies on the shore, and feared and believed God, and his servant Moses. They all sang, praising God for what he had done for them.